Well, hello and welcome back to TwoSun Tuesday. So if you guys were basically watching as these videos come out, you'll notice I accidentally missed a week. Basically, life kind of got really busy with work and stuff like that, and I thought I had another week's worth of these things recorded, and it turns out I didn't. So unfortunately, that's kind of the way that was. But hey, I'm back. I only missed 1 week. Here we go. This is a NightMorning design. This is a TS313. There we go. We can see that basically on the label there. This was the first button lock that TwoSun has come out with. At the time I'm recording this, it's basically right around a year old. When they had a presence at Blade Show last year. Tepe Designs was actually kind of a little bit in their booth and had a whole bunch of these for sale. But I wasn't at the show, and luckily I was able to get a hold of them online. When these guys first came out, pretty darn expensive, and I still think they kind of are a little expensive. But I don't know. What are you going to do? This has a gigantic slab of M390 steel on it, and quite a lot of milling work and everything has gone into these handles here. So there we go. As well as their button lock, which I really do like. I've noticed that if you fully put all of your pressure down on the button here, they still swing nice and freely. Whereas a lot of other companies' button locks, well, I'll grab a Civivi Conspirator here. Where, yeah, you can see it's all nice until you push down all the way, in which case that blade really doesn't move all that much. For whatever reason, TwoSun's implementation of that ends up working with full motility when you have all the pressure in the world plunged down on them. So, I don't know, it's just a small thing, but I like it quite a bit. So, yes, this is a full titanium construction. Outside of course, the whole plunger for the button lock thing. That's obviously made out of steel, and their standard hardware is. I think the hardware on these are steel as well, but a lot of TwoSun's thumb studs are actually titanium rather than steel, so that's just something a little bit different there. But yeah, we got a nice fuller, not fully straight, a little more of a subtle curve there, like a hot dog maybe. And of course we got 6 holes in there. Kind of makes me think of an inline 6 engine, something like, I don't know, I'm going to show my ignorance on car engines, so I won't mention anything about that. But yeah, that's kind of what that reminds me of. We have the kind of area where it's raised up in the back for the plunger to go. That's where NightMorning's logo is. And of course, it has the titanium pivot collars of TwoSun. That, yep, it is what it is. I don't mind it. I do like collars in general, but yeah, it's not everybody's cup of tea. That's all right. The thumb studs themselves, I'm not a huge fan of. They do work great. They're flat on top, so they work great if you want to put your thumb onto it and do a slow roll. Works great that way. But because you have this really high side here, it's actually a little uncomfortable to use it in the standard thumb stud flicking sort of thing. So I'm not the hugest fan of that, but hey, they're at least really easy to remove. You could even use a coin like a dime or something like that to be able to start the unscrewing process on there. Super easy to do. And that'll leave you with just the button lock for deployment, and that's perfectly fine. This thing uses multi-row bearings, which is great. That, however, isn't a first for this. It's the first one where they've actually fully taken advantage of it, but the first knife that was actually released that had multi-row bearings was this guy. This is a TS321. I guess this is a TS321 red, because it had a little red circles around the pivot, but this is the only model they ever made, so I don't know. Yeah, it's the 321. This is a 14C 28N model, also from NightMorning, who was kind of the advocate for getting these multi-row bearings off the ground. But this one doesn't really take advantage of a lot of the extra nuance that multi-row bearings could have on there. But it's still got them, so that's nice. We get a little bit more stability side to side there, which is good to see because this one does have an external blade pen rather than being inside the blade itself there. But yeah, these thumb studs from TwoSun I do appreciate a lot more. Some people say they're pointy, but again, I think that's probably people putting their thumb on top to do a slow roll open. And yeah, that's not super comfortable. But if you're behind there flicking it out, super great. But alrighty, so there is that. This thing is not a dainty little thing, but his blade isn't absolutely enormous. We do have a 4mm blade stock thickness on this guy. And as we can see, we got basically a saber grind on here. Hollow grind, kind of. I mean, it is, but it's not very, very deep hollow grind there. And then reinforced at the tip. I have basically reprofiled this to 15 degrees. And it ended up going up the shoulder a little bit more than I wanted, but that does show kind of two things. One, that this thing is not particularly super thin behind the edge, and that meeting with the saber grind there means that this is not one that's going to easily glide through a whole bunch of cardboard. It'll probably glide up to a point, but most likely it will get bound a little bit. The blade does pass just ever so slightly right around with the thumb stud there, so that might get a little bit difficult if you're really trying to push through at that very edge there. I haven't really run into anything with it, but hey, your mileage may vary on that particular aspect there. But yeah, this is a, I don't know, hollow ground Tonto clip point. Sure, let's go ahead and call it that. But yeah, this thing, its blade does face down a little bit, and that does help with getting a little bit of extra power out of there, meeting just a little bit more before you would expect it to with a lot of other knives. And it's nice and comfortable in your standard saber holding kind of thing here. And you can also easily choke up. And the blade doesn't fully come back all the way here, but still really nice and comfortable up there. And a fairly large sharpening choil. It's got a rather gradual plunge grind that ends basically right around here. So you see I haven't actually made a smile with that, even though I did actually put this shoulder up a little bit higher than I actually wanted to. A little bit of that was my fault, basically trying to find a decent way to clamp this thing in. What I probably should have done was take it apart, take the thumb stud off, and then be able to clamp it up there. Instead, I think I clamped it along this here, and that ended up just making the angle a little bit too much. But hindsight is always 20/20, but that's perfectly okay. This knife is ridiculously robust on its own, so it's not like I've damaged it or anything. Still cuts super nice. The pocket clip, not too bad. Most of it sits kind of in that fuller channel sort of thing, and has a decent amount of flex to it. Not too bad to get in and out of the pocket. So that's pretty darn good. You see the action on this thing is super, super nice. And this is actually a little tighter than probably what needs to be on the pivot there, but that's okay. I do like the backspacer quite a lot. We got some crenellations going on here, and then kind of the edge back here cut out for lanyard carry, but doesn't really dig into my palm, or at least I don't feel it when I'm holding it in any of those particular situations. So it's nice and hidden and out of the way, but super functional for those who actually want it. So that's good. And yeah, I don't really have any troubles with lockout. Super nice and sturdy as far as that goes. One other complaint I think some people have had with this, it hasn't bothered me, but I will mention it, is the tip of the blade here isn't fully covered. So I guess if you are to basically poke your finger into there, that can be a problem. That being said, I mean, when it's in my pocket, I'm carrying it basically right-handed because that's the way that that pocket clip is. So it's in and at the back of my pocket, which means I'm not getting down this side ever. So it hasn't bothered me at all, but some people have had some complaints about that and have had people either fix that by taking the tip back or other such modifications to fix some things up. But yeah, this thing has a lot of machine work done to it. Obviously, we have fully contoured titanium scales on this guy, and then we have the fuller in there, as well as the holes all the way through, and that changes even a little bit more on the inside. But beyond that, if I get super nice and up and close, you can see we have a micro milled texture going on there, and of course the whole raised area of the titanium, which is fairly difficult to have be very, very nice and gradual without seeing strange facets and stuff like that show up when you're doing some CNC milling of that sort of stuff. So yeah, works out super great. I do like it quite a bit. It's probably not my favorite NightMorning design, probably just because it's just super huge and robust. I am glad to see that they've, since this one have come out, released many other button locks. There's been some really, really great ones. I think one I recently reviewed for the channel was the TS313, and that is just chef's kiss. It's primo stuff. But yeah, a lot of work ended up going into this. And it's a great knife. That being said, I think overall, this thing, when it was released, was the most expensive, at least for a new knife that I had seen. But that also being said, I haven't seen, at the time that they posted this, one of their newer integral frame locks that can get up a little bit more. That being said, though, I mean, I did pick this up off of Amazon, but I had a little bit of money from basically returns to Amazon from some broken stuff that they sent me earlier. I think it was a pair of headphones and some other stuff, and some credits and stuff like that from credit cards. So I ended up getting this for about 145, I want to say. 145, maybe 160. I don't remember. It was one of the two. Either way, that was pretty decent. I think they went a lot higher than that out the gate. Maybe like 180, 185. They're probably well over $200 if you find them now. That being said, I guess they are a little bit hard to find at the moment. I'm sure they're making more. This was a very, very popular model for them. It sold out when they were at Blade Show very, very quickly. Not in the first day, but they weren't in the main hall as far as I remember anyway. But yeah, really, really great knife. One other last thing that I will say about this guy here is this is an M390. They haven't exactly had the best track record, but for me, putting that 15-degree edge on there, this took forever to actually do on my guided edge sharpener. And the cuts that I've done with this, I haven't gone it to a point where it's completely dull, but this stuff is legit. They did a really, really good job heat treating at least this specimen of it. Like I said, I mean, for the most part, TwoSun over the last year or so has been pretty darn good with their M390. I did get a 328 Warlock that had really, really shitty heat treat on it. But luckily, that's the only one that I've had like that. And all the rest of them have been great. This one included. So glad to see that. Yeah, just a really great knife if you're looking for something huge. I think I have kind of mentioned in the past that it does look a little like, let's see, where is it? Here we go. Does look like he took a little bit of inspiration from that one to come out with this guy. This is a much newer release, but I've also reviewed it recently. This is the TS144, also a NightMorning design. You can see very much a lot of similarities there in the actual blade shape with the hollow grind. This one has a little bit more exaggerated tip on that Tonto there. Oops. So, yeah, let's go ahead and do some blade size comparisons and stuff like that. Help give people some context here. So we got Spyderco PM2. Sure, why not, since this is a big old robust thing. We got the Manix 2XL. Let's pull out a couple of Benchmades here. There's the bug out and the 940, which I guess fairly similar in length and blade reach on the 940 there, but obviously much larger and more robust as far as just the edge geometry and all of that sort of stuff goes. Let's see, we also have the Ontario Rat #1, and sure, why not? We'll go ahead and get that Kibar Dozier out there. So, it looks like I probably forgot to actually mention some stuff here. So I will do that here because it needs to be said. We got a 4mm blade stock thickness on this. I did cover that earlier. This is a 5.8 ounce knife, which is pretty heavy. It's 165 grams. And obviously there's a lot of material here, so it's not going to be a lightweight knife. 3.34 inches. Kind of measured basically from this point on the handle, that top point, out to the tip there. And it's 0.55 in thickness, which is a little bit thicker than, say, kind of the industry standard of the paramilitary 2, that's 0.501 or 0.5. But this is also contoured, so basically at the top and bottom, it's about the same thickness at a ½ inch. So, yeah, that also comes out to 14 millimeters for the handle thickness. So yeah, this thing is pretty neat. I don't really have a whole lot of qualms with it, like I'd said during the normal thing. I think probably having some thinner grinds going on the blade might have been a little bit more my preference, but you know, otherwise I don't really have a lot of qualms with it. I do like it quite a bit. It's nice and comfortable without being like absolutely gigantic as far as length goes, at least with it. And yeah, so there's the standard review of it. So yeah, if that's what you came by for, then I appreciate it. You know, like, comment, subscribe. I'll shut up with all of that stuff now. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at the inside of this thing now. And I will say, this thing is not the easiest thing to put back together. I actually did try to record this video once, a few days prior to this, and ended up getting frustrated with it and walking away. I think I do have that locked down a little bit more, so here we go. The first time I did take this apart, though, I didn't really have any problems getting it back together, so I don't know what that's all about. Maybe just me being special. We'll use that word, special. There we go. We got a couple of guys there. And there's the pivot screw. Lift that up slowly. Okay, so, yep, there's the spring for it. We have their multi-row bearing race there that doesn't actually have channels cut into it, which I kind of wish that they did, but that does make, I guess, assembly and some manufacturing a little bit more difficult. But yeah, on the inside here, we can see they do have some weight relieving going on the inside there, with these interesting holes kind of going on here. And of course the multi-row bearings themselves. And even more, of course, we have the plunger. There's a side that that houses the spring. There's, of course, your push button and the backspacer here, which yeah, it does have a little bit more detail than a lot of their others do. So part of what makes this thing a little bit difficult to put back together here is we do have a D notch for the pivot. That does mean that you can't actually try to put this thing together the other way, because it won't go back in that way. So you do have to build it from this side, which, I mean, in general is probably the best way to do it, but yeah, you'll see. This thing can have at least a little bit of troubles when you're putting it all back together. But, okay. There is the standard stuff. And these Chicago screws are not the tightest fit, so they can come out pretty easily if you're trying to manipulate the blade a little bit there. There we go with that. The notch on this is paramount that you get it basically spot on. Otherwise, you're gonna have a bad time. But okay, and just get that underneath there, and then I will spin that a little bit. Make sure that the pivot is pushed all the way through. Gonna want that blade stop pin all up in there. Okay, there's that. There's the bearing race there. Then I can take the spring, go on top here. And something that's probably pretty nice to point out, because it's something that has caused me problems before, is to remove the pivot collar here so that you can actually see that this is properly seated in there. Because if not, it will kind of go back together, but it will feel a little loose, and also the thumb stud won't end up working. It will basically lock closed. You can push the button to open it so it acts a little bit more like a like the button locks VV Elementum, but yeah, overall, not what you actually want for this thing to be fully functional. So there is that. Yep, and you can see, well, we might not be able to see, but yes, I did not quite get that pivot lined up. This was the same problem that I ended up having before. You basically have to be very, very careful. And unfortunately, if this thing just had a bit of a screw on that side, I could do that. Alternatively, if it also had one of TwoSun's earlier pivots, I probably could have even held it in place with this. But that's also not an option. So, unfortunately, I gotta take all of these things off to be able to get back in there and reseat everything. And hope that it ends up going better. Okay, so it spun up quite a bit. Oops. Yeah, so in case you hadn't heard me say it before, I'd highly suggest not bothering to take this thing apart if you don't have to. Just because it is a little bit more on the challenging end of the spectrum. There we go. It also helps if you actually push that button. Kind of like some access locks, where it helps if you actually disengage the lock to be able to make sure that the pivot actually goes all the way through. And okay, I've got that. Now, of course, that kind of got out. A little frustrating, but that's okay. I can deal with that after the fact. I should be putting that in that side. There we go. Not going to fully tighten this up yet because I don't have the other Chicago screw in there yet. There we go. Keep my finger on the other side of that. Okay. Yes, I can flick it open. The pivot is flush on both sides. Nice and smooth. Fully locked up. Yeah. We are good to go. So, there we go. As I said, and I got a little explicit with some of the explanations on this. This one's maybe a little bit more difficult to put back together than a lot of their other knives, including some of their other button locks. It seems like they've gotten a little bit better with fitment and placing on things with some of their subsequent newer models. But there you go. There's the TS313. Kind of one of their flagship models that came out, that being the first one with their button locks, which of course is basically the rage at the moment. So of course they had to get in on that, and it's not a bad first entry. I think they've been surpassed by some of the newer ones. Maybe not in the steel decision on them, except for maybe the TS303 that also had M390 and performed magnificently as well. But there we go. That's basically everything that I have to say on the TS313. It's a neat one. I'm glad to have it in my collection, and I'm also glad that I ended up paying a little bit less than a full retail thing, even if it was, money that I could have put towards something else, like a different knife or, I don't know, food, whatever else I could buy on Amazon. Alrighty. All that being said, like I said earlier in the video, this thing is a little bit difficult to find at the moment. I think I have seen it on AliExpress recently, but White Mountain Knives and Tangley on Amazon don't have any at the moment, but I'm sure more are on the way because this thing was a fairly successful model. So I suppose if you are kind of looking for one, yeah, just go ahead and play the waiting game if you actually want to buy one retail. If not, I suppose you can always hit up forums for people who like to sell and trade and stuff like that. As long as you do your due diligence and make sure that you're not getting into a scam situation where you actually won't get any sort of knives and stuff like that. So yeah, that's unfortunate, but hey, it happened. Especially a little bit more during the pandemic, probably where some people had knives and just kind of needed money because, problems with their particular industry not allowing them to continue working during the pandemic and all that stuff. I don't know. Either way, I'm done ranting on this. I do think a lot more are going to be coming on the way, so hooray, hooray. And, yeah, as always, I appreciate y'all for watching. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. And subscribe.